we're doing analysis, I'm going to come in the line with the acromion. I'm looking for more than a quarter of an inch sway going forward and backward. That would make it a category 1. Have Emily turn away towards the left. Come to S2, and we're looking for sway going left and right. And there will be more than a quarter of an inch sway. That will be category 2. And for category 3, we're looking for an antalgic lean, which she does not have, so we're good. We're going to have her have a seat. And we're going to come and contact the first tubercle, or excuse me, contact the tubercle of the first rib while she's flexing and extending. And what I'm feeling for here is if there's no movement, we have a category 3. And if there is a bilateral movement, we have a category 1. And if there's, which the bilateral movement would have to be more than a quarter of an inch. And for movement of 1 more than a quarter of an inch, that would be a category 2. Okay. And so the next thing we're going to do is have Emily lay down on her tummy. And right here we're just taking a look at the spine. And this is for the Lubbock brothers, excuse me. And for the TVPs of the cervical spine, they will correlate with the spinous processes of the lumbar spine. And for the spinous processes of the cervical spine, they will correlate with the mammillary processes of the lumbar spine. And we will pretty much just walk down the vertebrae feeling for any tenderness. And how they are going to go together, you would have C1 correlate with L5, C2 with L4, C3 with L3, and so forth. And so based off of those, if we found the tenderness, depending on where the tenderness is, we would be able to categorize it as category 1, 2, or 3. Next, I'm going to have Emily flip over on her back. And for this, I'm going to ask you to lay your feet all the way flat, thank you. And I'm just going to let her head relax in my hands, and I'm just going to ask you to raise your legs up about 18 inches off the table, good. And then the next thing I want to do is compact your head, which means I'm going to push it down, Emily. And I need you to raise your legs again. Okay? And it's noticeable to me which one is harder for her, but I'm going to ask you, Emily, which one's harder? Okay. So since the first one was easier, we know that that means that she could have some issues with her lumbar spine. But if it was the other way around, that means she could have some cervical issues. The next thing I'm going to do while I have her in this position is do the stair-step method. And so what I'm going to do is pretty much push and go up. And wherever we find one that's not really, moving in that plane the way we would like it to, we're going to do the infinity sign. And so to do the infinity sign, it's not going to be a forced movement. Just going to take it back and forth. And then we'll reverse it. Okay? And I didn't want to do it too much because I didn't find one on the Emily. The next thing we're going to do is do basic 1. And for basic 1, what I'm going to do is come underneath Emily's head, place those forefingers by the mastoid process, and what I'm doing is feeling for the balance of the CSF flow for Emily. And once it releases, she'll just basically, fall into my fingertips, which she's done. Next thing we're going to do is basic 3. To do basic 3, come across the sutures, feel for one that's tender. Once I locate one, cross my thumb across, and I'm going to make sure I'm on the parietal bones, and I'm going to have Emily take a deep breath in, and while she does that, I'm going to pull up, and when she exhales, I'm going to let it down, and we're going to do that 3 times. In this case, we're not going to do that because I didn't find one that was tender on Emily, but that would be the steps for it. The next thing I'm going to have Emily do is pour her hands all the way over her head and bring them out, and then I'm going to pull, pretty much just traction. And then I'm going to put our hands together, and I'm down. Now the one that's shorter, it will be the side that we're going to correct. So we're going to do the right side. And I'm going to pull Emily's leg up. Emily, is it okay if I contact across underneath your leg? Okay. So I'm going to do that. And I'm going to come here. And what I'm going to do is have you take a deep breath in. let it out, and I'm going to go further down. And then I'm going to do that again, and go further down. And then I'm going to do it on the third time. And on this one, I'm going to strip, but in this case, we're not going to do that for her. Okay? Then we're going to bring her down. Next, we're going to have Emily scoot down towards the end of the table for me. Okay? And then I'm going to turn her in, internally, rotating, and whichever one that wouldn't go that well into 45 degrees, we know that's the one that we're going to work on, which in this case is going to be right. So what I'm going to do is come in on that one and feel for the greater trochanter. And for the greater trochanter, I'm going to have her turn in and out, and turn in one more time and out. And then on this third time, when I count to 3, I'm going to have you turn really fast, okay, at the same time. 1, 2, 3. Okay. And so for the very last one, we're going to do the arm fossa test. So I'm going to have you bring your arm up straight, feeling to make sure it's a good muscle, which it is, so we tested that. And the next thing, Emily, that I want to tell you about is we're going to be in the inguinal ligament section, which is close to your pubic bone. So is it okay if I contact you here? Okay. So we have the first fossa and the second fossa. So for the first fossa, I'm just going to come here and test, and it's strong. And then I'm going to move over into the inguinal ligament area and test, and it's weak, and or a little bit weak, so we know that that's the category for the second fossa test. And I will do this bilaterally. So we've done it bilaterally, and I'm going to both sides, and that will be the end.